I had no idea why I would want to be a girl, because I was a boy. Why would anybody really want to be a girl if you're born a boy? Why would you want to be a boy if you're born a girl? I found it very, very strange. It took me over 50 years to transition. And I think in some ways I have a story to tell. So I've written this book called From Shame to Freedom, because I felt shame as a young boy, young man. And later I feel free to be me, to be who I am. So basically that's what my book is about. And I've written a series of short stories. The first one is of my memories. They represent my earliest memories when I was about 5 or 6 years old, and of course looking back to that time. This story is called The Muff. The whole way was cold. Flakes of snow, which had blown in with each opening of the outside door, seemed to have a life of their own as they settled and remained unchanged on the row of coats hanging from their hooks, arranged along the wooden board attached to the wall. Along the opposite wall, everyone's shoes and boots were similarly lined up underneath a narrow bench, waiting for their owner's thick-socked feet. Cousin Mary sat next to me. She was nearly 2 years older than me, and we were celebrating her 8th birthday with a family outing to the pictures to see Courage of Lassie. Mary had long black hair, brown eyes, and long eyelashes, which curled upwards much more than mine did. She was pretty, and I envied her. As we sat on the bench, I noticed that Mary was struggling to get her unworn fur-lined boots onto her feet. They were the nicest boots I'd ever seen. Unlike my boots, which in my mind were big, ugly, and heavy army boots, hers had no laces and were made of soft light brown leather with collars of fur just below her knees. They didn't have big metal cleats and blakies. They didn't shout out, tap, 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 like mine did as I walked across the linoleum floor. In some strange way, my boots said loudly to me, and for everyone to hear, man, man, man. Don't forget to put your scarves on, Auntie Hilda said to Mary and me, and button up well. She continued as she took our scarves and coats off their unreachable hooks and passed them to us. It's bitterly cold out there. We don't want you coming down with colds. Auntie Hilda was the oldest of my aunts, and she always took charge when things needed to be done. I liked my winter coat. It was different. It always reminded me of the Navy and sea captains. It was light brown and it didn't do up with buttons. Instead, I slipped wooden toggles through short loops of cord which were attached to the coat. I turned the collar up in anticipation of the blowing snow outside. Mary's coat was ordinary. It was red and done up with buttons. I found myself wondering why it so strongly drew my attention. It wasn't the color or what it was made of, as I had a similar coat. Strangely, I realized that it was because Mary's coat did up on the opposite side to mine. That meant that it was a girl's coat, and Mary could wear it. Her coat was also longer than mine, and even though she was wearing a party dress, her legs would stay warm, unlike my bare legs, with their knobbly knees protruding from my short trousers. I had to hope that my socks would stay up and not fall down, as they usually did, untidily around the tops of my boots. As Mary finished doing up the buttons on her coat, she pulled out of one of the pockets a patterned knitted woolen cap which covered her ears. I watched her push back her long black hair around her shoulders and then created a huge bow under her chin with 2 woolen ties with bubbles on their ends. Mary was lucky. "Don't forget to put your gloves on," Auntie Hilda commanded as she stood all bundled up next to the front door with her hand on the knob. I reached into my coat pockets, withdrew 2 woolen gloves and dutifully slipped them onto my hands. "Where are your gloves?" I said to Mary as I noticed her bare hands. "I have a muff," Mary said with the emphasis on I. "It matches my boots." With that, Mary picked up her muff from the bench where she had been sitting, placed the loop of cord over her head and tucked it under the collar of her coat. The muff hung at waist level, waiting for Mary's hands to slip into the welcoming cocoon of fur. The only muffs I had ever seen before were at the pictures where elegantly dressed women and girls in long flowing dresses wore them when they were outdoors. Muffs, I learned, were for the rich and well-educated, but most importantly, they were never for boys and men. "Here, try it. Put your hands inside my muff. It's so warm," Mary said as she bent over to lower it for me. "Boys don't wear muffs," I replied with disdain, and stumped over to stand beside Auntie Hilda at the door. "Are we all ready for the big white world out there?" Auntie Hilda said, opening the front door for us. Mary stared at me for a moment, put her hands inside her muff, and walked through the doorway with her head held high. I followed her into a world of whirling snowflakes and coldness that quickly engulfed me and chilled me to my core. It was an empty, silent world. I thrust my hands deeper into my pockets and walked on.